Welcome to Between Product and Partnerships, a podcast focused on bringing together product, partnership, and engineering leaders to discuss how to build, support, and scale SaaS ecosystems. This podcast is presented by Pandium, an integration platform for building native integrations.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for listening to our podcast Between Product and Partnerships, where we talk about the challenges and what it takes to build integrations, tech partnerships, and SaaS platforms. Today, I'm so excited to have Therese Stowell, VP of Product Launch at Anaplan, as well as Dizzy, who may make a cameo. You might see there in the video. Welcome. Would you give us a little bit of information about you and your background?
Sure. Yeah. So I've had a really varied career, kind of meandering. Undergraduate, I was computer science, and then I went to Microsoft to work on operating systems, including the first version of Windows NT, where I got to write the command line. So I was there for 8.5 years. I spent another 2 at Sony Research Labs and Hitachi as an engineer. And then I took a hard left into art. So I ended up getting my master's in fine art in London. And I had a reasonable art career. But I got married and then I had a child, and then I sort of stopped art and became a stay-at-home mom. And then at some point I got really worried about climate change. So I started a social enterprise in sustainable food. And then I pivoted back into tech, and into product specifically. And I was really delighted to discover product management as a role. It was fairly new. And it absolutely suits me to a T. So I started as a staff product manager, and then worked my way up to VP of product at a few startups, Pivotal, on Fido, and now I'm at Anaplan, where I've taken on more of a product ops role as VP of product launch.
Awesome. That's such a unique background. And I'd love to just learn more about that. As someone myself, I took like a couple of big career, I wouldn't even call them pivots because they were sort of completely unrelated to my other career. I'm always curious what inspires folks to do that. So yeah, I'm just curious, like you started in engineering, what made you decide to go into art, and like what, I guess, not just decide to go into art, but what about that timing worked for you? And then what brought you back to tech?
Yeah, good question. So I've always, I never had a grand plan, obviously, because it never would have looked like that. I have always been led by curiosity and what I'm excited about. So like when I went to college, I was going to major in something like neuroscience or cognitive science or something like that. And I took the introduction to programming course, and I was like, oh my God, this is my thing. So I just did it because I loved it. And then during my 20s, and this is kind of a weird thing, I discovered that I had an eye for color and design and stuff, and I was really curious about it. So took a bunch of classes and ended up going to art school and having a career, which I was completely astonished by, because to me, making art always seemed like black magic. I know, given it's Halloween today. So that, yeah. So, yeah. And then, so I did that for a while, and then I got back into tech because, I had to become the primary breadwinner. I didn't really have a choice. And it was literally the hardest thing I've ever done. I mean, literally. So I was 15 years out, and I didn't pattern match for any role. So I talked to so many people, and they were like, well, you seem smart, but we don't know what to do with you. And I think I got rejected like at least 50 times. And emotionally, it was so hard to keep going. But I fundamentally just didn't have a choice, because I had to be the primary breadwinner, and you got to eat. And so what I ended up doing was networking at a sustainable food event. So I kind of, I had people who knew me in that realm. And I joined a team that ended up winning a 40,000 pound prize for using open data to solve sustainable food problems. And that was my first role back in tech. And also that actually got me into product management, which I'm really grateful for.
It's so funny how those things like end up working out. I left tech after consulting for a bunch of years and went to cosmetology school and became a colorist. I did hair for a bunch of years, which like people who listen or have met me in person would probably that tracks. And when I decided I wanted to go back to tech, I'd been out not for quite as long, but for a hot minute, and I didn't want to go back to consulting. And I ended up getting a job at a company that provided software for salons that needed to do integrations to ERP, which is what I was doing at when I was consulting. So it's just very random that that position just was there and was like this great combination.
That's my advice to people, because I know the job market right now is super hard, is figure out that Venn diagram of all your experience that makes you unique and see if you can find that thing.
Yeah, I always tell folks too, and especially if you're not really 1,000% committed to like one specific role, to
Mhm.
find the company, the type of company that you want to be a part of, and just like get in there. And you know, if you're a scrappy person and you can solve problems, like you'll figure out how to find the right role. I don't know if that was similar for you, but that's been my experience. Also, maybe for us or for me, because integrations are things that no one ever wants to solve, and I love it. So there's always like a problem set for me, no matter where I go. But yeah, I do find it really interesting, like the second career folks and just like how the market is evolving and how post COVID, like secondary education, I think the requirement for that has shifted a little bit. And like the idea that you have to go to college and then get a job with your degree, I think has changed
Oh, for
a
sure.
little bit. Yeah, I'm wondering, I'm sure you've hired folks since then. I'm wondering if you've had a similar experience or what kind of applicants you guys see.
We see thousands of applicants. And a lot of them, you know, obviously haven't read the requirements, which is a little frustrating. So there's a lot of like, there's a hard filter at the beginning. But then you find actually really, really qualified senior people who are willing to take a step down. And and what I've seen is that people tend to want to hire somebody who's been doing that exact thing for a long time because they have that choice, given all it's a conservative, it's a safe thing to do.
Hmm.
For me though, I actually hire for the raw material and and the experience, but not necessarily the domain experience, but the skills required to solve like demonstrating the skills required to solve the problems that I need solving.
Yeah, I think I love what you said about curiosity. That's something that I always advise folks on if they ask, like, what would you advise me if I'm looking for my first product job or first job in XYZ? And I think curiosity and humility, like the combination of those two things can be really powerful, like
Mhm.
having the curiosity to want to learn and being scrappy and being smart, and also having the like humility to know when you should ask a question or when you should turn to somebody, because I think that is also a skill that can be overlooked, especially if you're more junior in your career.
So, and I will say that though, like I look for those things in the hiring manager interview. And if I don't feel like people are willing to ask questions and willing to get feedback and adjust their responses, and really asking good questions that are relevant, they don't pass. It's just like that's table stakes for me.
Yeah, and I think actually now that I'm thinking out loud about it, like curiosity and humility kind of go hand in hand. Like if you're a naturally curious person, Dunning-Kruger style, like you'll know what you don't know or know that you don't know
Yeah.
and be interested in finding out the answer versus kind of relying on your priors to feed into every decision that you make. But
Yeah.
we could talk about that forever. I want to get
Yes.
back to your experience. I could do a whole series on this type of stuff. Um, so product launch management. That is a position, admittedly, that I don't hear a ton about, like as its own standalone kind of thing. So
Yeah.
maybe if you could tell me a little more about like what is that? What does that
Yeah.
mean? And what about it is exciting to you? What do you love about it?
Yeah. So it was, as I said, I come from a product management role. And in my last role, we had a bunch of problems where we were investing in products that didn't make money or just weren't the right things to build. And then we had products that were getting stuck in beta, either because they had scope, like people kept adding features to them, or we didn't have enough customers to test, to get the feedback to go GA. And we had other problems as well. And because I ran product for all these products that were having problems, I got asked to fix that problem. And so I worked with a really amazing technical program manager, and we designed what we called the alpha beta GA process, and implemented it at my old company. And it went really well. And then when I moved to New York, the headhunter found me because I had done that. And this seemed like this was a really exciting opportunity. So if you think about it, it's not like with products, you build it and they will come. No, it doesn't work that way, right? You can put it in the market, but unless you have kind of marshaled all your resources, made sure that the sales team is selling and that marketing is generating leads, and that your professional services know how to implement, and your support knows how to support, and all those pieces come together, then it's kind of pointless to build a product. It's a waste of money. And so you can kind of think about this job as tuning the revenue engine of the company. That is so impactful, right? And and it's also, and it's like that super, it's a machine. It's a machine that sits across all the different functions in the company. And I'm a systems thinker, and I get a huge endorphin hit out of efficiency and problem solving. And so it's this combination of what brings me endorphins, and then what also plays to my strengths. So it's pretty fun.
Who do you spend the most time with in terms of like the departments? I feel like this is like a very cross-functional
Yeah.
role. Like, are
Yeah.
you mostly with marketing people? Like, I'm curious
It
where you spend.
really depends on the stage of the launch. So at the beginning, you've got you've got product will have done that foundational research around why they've built the thing and how they're going to solve the problem. That goes to marketing to create those initial marketing materials like a pitch deck and a data sheet, et cetera. That stuff gets handed to the go-to-market enablement team, who then creates all the enablement. And then that goes to sales in the field, the CS, et cetera, so that they know how to sell a thing. So that's one timeline. And then there's another timeline, which is around the technical side. So once the product gets to a particular level of maturity, then you need like pre-sales and professional services and support to understand how it works undercover and how to implement and all that sort of stuff. So that happens a little bit later in the process. And then you want to create the demo. So, and the demo, like, you need a fairly stable version of the product to create the demo and to write all the documentation, and to do that sort of create the actual technical enablement. And so it really is dependent on what phase in the process you are.
Yeah. Do you spend a lot of time in like roadmap planning too, or do you pick up more like after the thing
Yeah.
is in flight?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what we anchor to the product release lifecycle. So if you have alpha, beta, GA, what I pay attention to are the beta dates, because that tells me when they think, like, then it's like about 3 months to GA.
Yep.
And so then we start about 3 months before. And so it's working closely with the product team to get those beta dates. And then we know when to kick off.
I wonder like how much of a buffer you are between the core product team and the sales team. Like, are they coming to you asking when things are going to be ready, or are they going straight to the regular product team?
So one of the interesting things one of the changes I made super early, before I joined, there wasn't a kind of really organized launch process. And so the product team would publish dates that the sales team interpreted as GA. but actually it was just the product being done and not all the other stuff around. And so I worked with the product team to redefine some milestones. And so instead of just going alpha, beta, GA, we have an extra milestone in between beta and GA, which we call production release. And production release is that the product team has tested the product and they are ready to operate it at scale. And so they publish those dates, but the product launch team publishes the GA dates. And so I guess that's a very long way of saying yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think having a framework for this is really interesting. Like a lot of what you're describing sounds somewhat like product marketing, but to your point, it's also enablement. And most companies that I've worked at have been, when I was consulting, it was really large companies, but have been smaller when I've been staff. And so there's like 15 different people responsible for all of this stuff. It's like CX has to write the help docs, and then maybe product marketing does like the dev docs, but who really knows? And then someone's doing, the co-marketing stuff, and then product is responsible for actually getting it out the door. And I do think there's maybe like that dispersion of responsibilities might also lead to a lack of like one person being the point person to go to. And with that in mind, like, your role exists. I can pontificate about why I think the role exists, but like, what what size companies do you think are the companies that could use a person or a role like this? Not use, I'm sure everyone could use it, but actually have something for someone like you to do. And how do you see this role kind of evolving as tech is evolving?
So I actually want to come back to a point that you made earlier around where does it sit? So I think my company was super smart. I got hired into strategy. And strategy is similarly cross-functional
Mm-hmm.
because I think if you sit inside any one function, you tend to focus on that function's needs and not have that sort of overlay view. And then also people might think that you are trying to push that one agenda rather than kind of being Switzerland. So back to your question on size of company. I don't think, in a startup, everybody does everything and they communicate. So you probably need a list and a document about what are the things that you need to do to go GA, but it isn't so important. But yeah, but I would say like scale up, absolutely. You need to start to look at this. And the more you're putting into the market, the more it's like it's a really small investment with a really big ROI. And so you're sort of silly not to pay good attention to it and invest in it if you're delivering a lot of new products.
I mean, I think in our neck of the woods with integrations, especially being selfish, talking about our stuff, I think this happens a lot, right? Is like, especially with integrations, they're not like typically viewed as big feature announcements. Often, a lot of times it's like almost like an operational requirement. It's like sales said I needed this thing, so we're going to build it really quick and we're just going to like try to knock it out and then never think of it again. And that always breaks my heart because I'm like, if you're investing any amount of time, if you're investing anyone's time at your company to get this thing scoped, to get it built, maybe to support it, hopefully, like, don't you want the world to be able to know that it exists? And especially in our world, a lot of times it's like someone in CX knows and someone in marketing probably knows because it went up on the website, but nobody in sales knows how it works. No one on the product team knows how it works. And, that framework of figuring out how you're going to launch integrations also obviously cascades into everything that you do. I don't know if you're responsible for that too at your org, but
I want to jump in.
Yeah.
So one of the key parts of what we do in the launch process is we have, sales plays where if you're kind of going after a particular buying center, you want to map all the problems that they might have and then figure out how we can sell to address each of those problems. And it's so much easier to sell to an existing customer than it is to get a new customer. So you're really missing a trick if you're not kind of plugging that new integration into some sort of sales play framework so that people, all the accounts that you have currently who might want to buy that thing, you can just like tack it into the contract and make an extra bunch of money. And it's like, it's almost like free money. I mean, it's like, why wouldn't you do that?
100%. Or like add it into your enterprise tier or
Exactly.
whatever. Like, or if you
Yeah.
have a customer that's upset, like just throw it in for free, whatever it is. I think like with the integration stuff specifically, a lot of times what happens is these integrations are built and there's no like UX or anything. It's like not in the product in a meaningful way. So I think that hinders it, and that it's like
Yeah.
seen as this kind of back end standalone thing for one customer, which is why we always say like, if you have even one, like put it in your app because people will then use it. And there's all that data around stickiness with integrations and all that
Absolutely.
stuff. But
Yeah.
going back, because I could talk about that forever too. I'm curious, I'm sure folks are wondering how to do their own product launches better. Do you have a framework that you find that you use? It sounds like you've built a lot of systems, but what at like a high level do you think
Yeah.
about when you're thinking about product launches?
So I come from a product background and I like to treat everything like a product. So find your pain points, figure out how you want to address them, build an MVP, test and iterate, right? So that's kind of that's the approach. In terms of steps, I start with discovery. So I think you need to start by talking to product and engineering to understand their software release lifecycle, because you have to hook it onto that, because essentially you want everything to be ready at the same time the product is ready. So it's questions like, do they have a beta milestone, and how do they define it? Do they typically run a beta testing program? How do they decide when the product is ready to GA? And then how long does each of those phases last? Then you also need to talk to all of the cross-functional people that you think might need to be involved in the process. So again, product, marketing, sales, finance, legal, compliance, support, customer success, enablement. Like, it really depends on your company, but I would bias toward inclusiveness rather than sort of skipping people. And when you talk to them, you want to talk about what's working, what's not working, what are their must-haves in a launch, what are the inputs they need, like from other teams, and get their, like, because you're kind of including them in the design process, you're educating and getting their buy-in at the same time. So you end up with advocate. That works really well. And what you'll end up with at that sort of at the end of the discovery phase is a very long list of tasks and deliverables and dependencies from each part of the company. So then you have to go into the design phase. So you take this incredibly long list and you shape it into a sequence of tasks, classic project plan, and dependencies. And as I said, you want to make sure that everything sort of lines up to GA. And as I said before, you probably want to anchor on that beta milestone. And one extra piece of advice is to make sure you build decision making for important decisions into the process. So who gets to decide that the product is GA, for example? And then the next stage is build. So you walk through the process that you've designed with each functional. You kind of circle back and sense check it with them. Is there anything missing? And then you want to like get your hands dirty, start using it and iterating it. And I would bias to doing this sooner rather than later. Like, be MVP, and don't be waterfall. Be agile, not waterfall. Like, don't wait till you have the perfect process to start rolling it out. So use it for a product, figure out what works, and continually iterate.
It's easy, super easy. I'm just kidding. And on that note, tell me about the Anaplan when you started and what their current state is for product launches and what you've learned and seen during that time.
Oh my goodness me. All right. So we have an incredible pace of innovation, where we've invested 500 million in building new products, which is why I got hired in the first place. Like, they were smart. They saw it coming and they're like, we need to make sure that we're doing this right, because all that investment will not be maximized if we don't. So when I started, we were launching 4 products, and we tested them all with this like very nascent process. Over time, I have scaled the team, so I now have 3 people in the team, and we've put in place. So we continually improve the process, and we've put in place a project management tool, because very quickly we learned that Excel is not the right tool, um, and then with this sort of actually a big part of rolling it out is educating people and getting their buy-in. This is very much a leading via influence rather than authority role. But also a lot of these things are new. Like you're asking a product manager to write a document that they've never written before, for example. So you spend a lot of time on the coaching side. Now that we are launching, I think I want to say there are 30 concurrent launches happening right now, which is kind of so we as a launch team talk continually about how to improve the process. And so some of the things we've done is we publish an agenda the day before the meeting. If people have updated their tasks and we have correct status and there aren't any blockers or issues, they don't have to come to the meeting, which is a kind of a big carrot for not having, for filling in your task status. We've built a bunch of reporting that helps, like reports for our team, reports for each of the cross-functional teams, reports for people, just to help them manage the volume of work. And I think that's some of the big stuff that we've done.
I'm curious if you're able to share like what your meeting cadence is like across the departments. And obviously not every meeting, but like, do you meet with product every week? Do you meet with them once a month? Like probably more with product, but like marketing.
So when actually, I'll talk about what it looks like to run a launch, because we start by scoping. So even though we've got this well-defined process, every product is a snowflake in some way. And so we look at all the tasks and we figure out what can we get rid of, what do we need to add. And so we go into a launch kickoff, which is actually, so we have, the other thing we do ahead of that is we define the working team. And so the working team will be representatives from each of those cross-functional teams. And we have a meeting typically once a week for half an hour with that team. But we start with a kickoff meeting, which is typically an hour, and it has a broader audience. And what we do is we talk about why do we do a launch process, what's in it for you. And then the product manager will give an overview of the product. And that's actually a really good thing, that a lot of people who aren't necessarily involved in the launch get to understand what it is we're bringing to market. And then we talk about logistics like tooling, meeting cadence, roles and responsibilities. And then we go into that weekly cadence. And as I said, we have an agenda. And if you are not, if you're involved later on, then you will not have to come to those early meetings. And that's all about that efficiency.
That's awesome. I feel like I've worked places where that would have been really helpful and also would have cut down on, it's not even the mystery. It's just like there's so much thrash when you don't have those types of meetings of like ad hoc stuff constantly, which there is a lot of that, but it's also nice to be able to say we have our meeting on Thursdays. Let's like pencil that in as a topic just to keep everyone aligned and focused. And I also do love the you don't have to come if you do the thing you're supposed to do.
Exactly.
Lead with the carrot.
Actually, one of the efficiency things that we've done as well is we have like lines of business. And so we'll combine, a lot of the people in those meetings are the same people. And so we'll have a per LOB longer launch meeting. So that's just another efficiency thing.
Well, I think we are coming up on time. I want to give the opportunity, any final words of advice for creating effective product launches, or anything else, or anything you want to plug?
So the thing that, like, obviously you have to have a really good process and tooling and all that sort of stuff, but at least 50% of running a successful launch is the people side of it. So collaboration, communication, like getting that people to change their behavior because this is a new process for them, making sure they're aligned to what you're trying to achieve and they kind of are bought into it. Um, so I talked about, pulling those cross-functional teams into the design process so that they were, on, like, take the people on the journey with you, and be transparent and inclusive, ask for feedback, act on the feedback, explain the why. Um, and then also, it is for a lot of people, a lot of those things are new. And so don't underestimate the amount of coaching you'll need to do, um, to help people get their work done at the beginning.
And then they'll all love you, and you'll be the person everybody goes to for all the questions, I'm guessing. Well, this has been really fun. I feel like we could talk absolutely forever about all this stuff, but we will have to leave it there. For our listeners, if you guys are interested in learning more about products and partnerships and APIs and integrations and all that stuff, pandium.com is the place to find us. We've got our blog, we've got worksheets, we've got more podcasts. Therese, thank you so much yet again for spending some time with us. And thank you, Dizzy. I don't know where she went.
Oh, she's right here.
Is she right there? Let's see. Thanks, Dizzy. I really appreciate it. I'm sure I will see you out there, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Awesome. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed our content, subscribe to our channel and give us a thumbs up. For more content on tech partnerships, integrations, and APIs, check out our articles, ebooks, and other resources in the description or visit Pandium's website.